My name's Larry Sefton. I'm a member of the Mid-South Woodturners Guild, and on my right over here is what is called the Scorcher II. I'm the maker and designer of that. It's a high-end pyrography machine. And on this side over here is a Razertip uh, brand pyrography machine. Over the past year, I've had several of the members of the club ask how I make uh, this type of handpiece right here. What my goal here is to show how to make a handpiece, but not one like this. What I want to do is show how to make a very, very simple handpiece that can be adapted for many other uses. And once you know how or see this concept, you'll understand how to make this particular handpiece, because once you know concepts, you can extrapolate it out and make your own items. What the plan is to basically go from, let's say, a piece of wire or nichrome wire and take you through the steps the whole way to the point of connecting it onto onto like the Scorcher II or to a razor tip. First things first though, the first thing you want to do is what type of connectors are out there and to connect your nichrome wire to it. And there are basically two different types. There's this round type like this one right here, and it is brass with and uses a set screw or Allen wrench to screw in. That particular one is very good. I have absolutely no complaints about it. I've used them for years. So if this is the type you prefer using, they're available on Amazon. Just make sure you get the right size. They come in about 3 different sizes, and you can get them too big, and then your wire wants to fall out of it. So the other version is this type here that it screws in and out with a screwdriver. It comes to you in a strip form, such as this right here. And this particular one is slightly different than what you probably have seen before. It used to be sold at Lowe's, but it no longer is sold there. And on the inside is a little flapper. And why that is important is whenever you slide your small wire into it, your wire doesn't happen to actually go up either one of the sides. For something like the 16 gauge wire, it really doesn't make that much difference. But if you're using, let's say, a 20 gauge wire, it could slip up around the side and you have difficulties screwing in or holding it in place, and it wants to slip off. So I'd recommend, if you're going to buy it, pay the extra couple dollars for the strip and get the ones with the little flapper on the inside. It works a lot better. Now the big problem is whenever you buy one of these is how to get them out of the inside. In this case, I've already done it. What you're going to do is take a saw and saw out the sides. You can do it with a bandsaw, but you're really better off doing it with, let's say, a hacksaw, because it can get away from you on your bandsaw. Use a hacksaw, pull it out, but here's the difficulty. Once you do that and you try and grab a hold of it, it still doesn't want to come out. You can try unscrewing the screws, and yes, that will help you get it out, but then you have to screw the screws back in. The easiest way that I have found is take yourself a hot air gun, let it warm up a little bit, and just heat those up a little bit. Heat them up. And all I'm doing is heating them. Doesn't take much. And typically you just grab a hold of them, and hopefully it works here, and you can pull them right out. There's one. There's two. See how easy they come out? But if you didn't do that, they would not come out at all. So we now have our connectors that go on between the nichrome wire and your wire here. This particular wire is the wire that I use right here is 10 gauge copper wire. This particular one is Romex. It was 240 volt wire. Not sure where I used it from somewhere, but you can get it at Home Depot, Lowe's. You can buy it by the foot, or you can buy single wire. But what you want is 10 gauge copper wire. So let's just pull it out. One piece is already stripped for me. That's the ground wire in this particular case. And we have the black wire here, which we need to make it bare. And just what I do is I just cut it like that and strip it back. And peel this off. This is going to be way too long, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut it down to a more manageable length. And I know from experience that this is about the length that I'm going to want to use, so I'm just going to cut it off and put that in my scrap bin, because copper is pretty valuable. Somebody's going to want that extra. Now, the choice that we have is whether we want to use the silver one or the brass. And in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and get the silver one and use the silver one. And the reason I'm going to use the silver one is I think a lot more of you are probably going to want to use this than the other type. You put it in about halfway and make sure it's good and tight. Now, after it heats up for a while, that'll soften up, and you probably are going to need to retighten it. We'll tighten this one up, put this one in, since we're going to need two leads on this handpiece. So we put it there. Again, I'm using 10 gauge wire, and I'm just using bare wire. The reason I use 10 gauge is that 10 gauge is rigid enough that you can it holds whenever you push on it, and it's easy enough to bend, so you can bend it and get around corners. And then if you're wanting to, you can go like this and not get into the fire and the heat. The other reason is I usually leave them fairly long as I can, because it allows the heat to dissipate and come off of it before it gets into my handpiece. So again, we're going to do 10 gauge wire. If you make this, I'm going to say caution, warning, all kinds of stuff here, safety precautions. Never ever make this type of handpiece and use it on something like a 12 volt or higher machine that you make yourself. Don't do it. This is always designed for low voltage, so that you can basically touch it and it's not going to harm you. 12 volts, you can start getting shocked on, and I know a lot of people that are making pyrography machines out of 12 volt battery chargers. That is not recommended. The one that you'd want to use, if you can find it, is a 6 volt battery charger, and most of those are hard to find, or you have to modify them extensively. Okay, we're to this point. The next point is, how do I connect it to some sort of wire or something that'll make it over to one of these machines? My recommendation is this Wago, It's a Wago brand. It's going to be a 221, and this is an inline Wago clip. Now this particular Wago is good for 18 to 12 gauge. Now remember, I said this is 10 gauge. It will fit into this because these are really designed also for stranded wire. So stranded wire, they make them a little bit oversized, and the 10 gauge will fit into it. It also is rated for 32 amps. Now I can tell you positively that this machine over here is never going to put out more than probably 15 amps at the most. It just isn't going to. And this one over here, I can tell you, is only going to put out at the most 15 amps on the on this side of it. If we were on the other side, which is called the high side, it could put off as much as 40 amps. But this still can be pretty much used on that. This side is the side that normally we'd be using for something of this nature. This is probably going to be only I don't know how much the amperage is coming out of it, but I'll tell you, I know it's going to be well under 15 amps. So this is quite safe to use. Let's go ahead and put this on. And just stick it in, and you'll see that if you just twist it just a little bit, it just slides right on, and you can see that that is really rigid on there. Let's go ahead and do this. There we go. Now here's what's interesting. Guess what we just did? There's your connectors. Here's the handpiece. Those connectors fit right inside like that, and holds the wire far enough apart at the top that it's not going to touch. So that's part of your handpiece right there. Next comes the wire. For our purposes here, we're going to use 14 gauge wire. You could probably use 16, but for the cost and the flexibility, I would use the 14 gauge wire, because it will handle, you could turn this up as high as you could possibly want it, and it is not going to ever really affect this wire. Now, if you look how this wire is, it is very, very flexible. You can do just about anything with it. It is highly stranded and flexible. Now, it is also rated for 200 degrees Celsius. Think about 200 degrees Celsius. So, what I'm telling you is, some of the members and some of the people that I know have made comment, oh, my wire's getting hot. It's getting hot. I can't use it. It's overheating. It's going to burn up. Maybe on the wire that comes with it or some of the other wires, that is true. But let me tell you, you could heat this wire up to the point that you basically can't hold on to it, and it'd still be good. So what I'm telling you is that, yes, these little conductors here, right here, they might get warm. They might get up to about 140, 150 degrees. This could even get up to 150 degrees. If you're at the point and you touch it and go, ow, it probably is getting a little too hot. But, getting a hold of it and it's warm, it's not going to hurt anything. So just accept that as part of the procedure and live with it. So, that said, let's go ahead and connect a piece of wire to it. Again, it's nice and flexible. You can do whatever you want with it. And what we're going to do is just strip it back. Where's my wire strippers? There they are. Strip it back. And on these, there's a little gauge that tells you about how far back to strip it. And so you strip it back to the recommended length. give a slight twist so that they go in, and now you stick it in. What's nice now is the way these are made, you can change that wire easily if you need to. You can change this point, and these are totally replaceable. By the way, these connectors right here, consider them throwaways. Buy enough of them. They're going to get creosote, tars, and soot on them to the point that they'll quit working for you. Unscrew it, throw them away, and put new ones on. They're throwaways. Whenever you do that, make sure though you sand and clean up your copper so that they make good contact. So where are we? Again, look what we already did. Here's your handpiece. The only difference is there's a nice piece of wood there holding it, separating them. The inside is exactly the same thing. This is a 3/4 inch conduit, plastic conduit. So basically you got a piece of wood, hollow inside. If you were to look, these are actually connected together with a piece of tape inside, or a piece of shrink tube. So now we're to this point. It can be taken over to one of these two machines, and that's where we're going to go next, is connecting it. Before we do that, why don't we do something else? Why don't we just attach those two together so that they stay together? And I'm just using black electrical tape. And I'm going to just run a piece of tape around them so that they stay together. Now, if you're into shrink tube and got a bunch of shrink tube laying around, shrink tube on this works great. Okay. And the other thing I'm going to do is take another short piece, because if I'm going to use this a whole lot, this wire will tend to want to split down. So I'm just going to put one little wrap on there to hold it together so it doesn't split from handling it. There you go. Let's go down to this end. We're going to talk about connectors. The best way, if you're going to be putting them into a machine that has the phono plugs in them, is to buy high-end connectors and solder it in. Soldering it 14 gauge into these is sometimes quite problematic. If you've ever done much soldering, there's not much room for you to be able to do that. It's pretty hard to get it inside here and do your soldering. So what you're going to do is go ahead and solder them in. Put this in, solder this in, then bring this around and solder that on and put it together. That is my preferred method if I'm going to do it. I am good at soldering, so I can do that. Some people are not good at soldering and don't want to even think about learning to do soldering. So let's do it a slightly different way, which is the other alternative is good old Amazon. And you buy one of these pigtails. It's already soldered up. However, when you buy one of these, be on the lookout. Some of them are not, they will tell you that they are 14 gauge, but it's very questionable whether they're 14 gauge. This one I do not believe it's 14 gauge. It's probably 16 gauge. They sold it as 14 gauge. I know that it's going to be heavy enough for what I'm going to be doing here, but make sure you buy them with 14 gauge. This one here, you can see it's 14 gauge, and if you read it, it actually is called 14 gauge and listed on the side. But you can buy those on Amazon. The other thing to be looking for on Amazon, if you're going to look at it, is the better ones will have the 14 gauge will be wire that has been tinned also and have a lot more strands than what this one does. It'll look more like this one here, that if you saw how this had all the strands in it, it will look more like that. Whereas if you look at this, it has plain copper wire. So what you're looking for is this type of wire whenever you're buying it. And here's what you do. Strip this off. Strip this one off. And put another one of these inline connectors on. One. Twist it, slide it on, and then take your other one and your pigtail, put it on there, and put it on here. Now what's kind of nice about this is you can make several of these hand pieces, connect this to one pigtail here, and just use this as a quick connect. And you could, usually you buy two of these at once, so that's probably way more than you're going to need. So here you are, it's already hooked up. Now the other version that you can do that's neat. By the way, this particular plug, you can also get it in the 1/4-inch phono plug, plug. I think they call them RCs. I always get them confused which one's which, and is the other style. And so you can get both types of plugs on these on Amazon or someplace like Zero or one of the other suppliers. The other method that I like using is using the crimp-ons. Most of you have seen the crimp-ons. They're relatively easy to put on. I'll go ahead and put this one on here as an example. All you do is twist it on, stick it on, and this one is, these are rated for 10 gauge wire, 14 gauge wire, 16 and 14 gauge. There it goes. And typically you might have a pair of crimpers like these. You can crimp it. Or you can use crimpers such as these and do it, and then you heat shrink it down. And you have a good connection, and this is what I usually like to use on this type. And there's several of these commercial units that also use screw-on type connectors. That's enough about the wire. We finished that part up, and we're back to this here. What do we do? Well, this is easy. Here's where the easy part gets in. Clean a little bit of this off. What you want to do is get a piece of scrap wood. Okay, This piece is probably about a 1/2 inch by maybe 1 1/4 inches. And what you're going to do is you're going to take it and drill a hole right about here and right about here, which will be about this. It should be the same diameter as your wire, maybe a little bit smaller. And then you're going to take a saw, and you're just going to cut it right here and cut this off right here. And it's going to make something that looks like this. You're going to end up with 2 pieces. Now on mine, I scratched some lines on it so I know which direction they go together in case they don't want to line up this way. But anyway, there it is. There's just a plain block of wood. Okay? And what you do is you take this apart and you stick that on. Let's get the right direction. It doesn't really matter which way those go. And here, reach over and go find yourself a set of small. What might be nicer is a little bit smaller than this. You just need to make sure that they open wide enough that you can get on your wood. A small set of vice grips. Put your vice grip in. Take this and just bend it over, because now your wire's coming out real nice off to the side. You don't have to fight it. The other hand pieces, the wire always sticks up and you have troubles fighting with it all the time. Now, as you can see, you can bend that wherever you want. You now have a hand piece that will do just about anything. Keep your hands out of the fire. No, it is not going to be one that you can delicately make carvings with. It is a branding or scorching hand piece meant for high temperatures. Hand stays away. Let's make and test it. I'm going to use a piece of 18 gauge wire. Just cut it off. I'm just going to make a quick curly Q. Make it like an S shape. There's my S shape. Hopefully you can see it. And we need to bend it up. Bend it up. Bend it up. Pull it apart a little bit farther. Now here's the nice part. As you can see, it can't reach. So what you can do with this is just pull it apart, do this, and you put this up near it and say, it needs to go a little bit farther. Let's go just a little bit farther. And let's go ahead and put them in. In, screwdriver. Now again, because it has that little flap on, it's going to screw right in. What I'm talking about is that little flapper inside. It helps with fine wire. And make sure you have good connection. Screw it down. Let's go ahead and do the other side. There we go. That's it. Let's see you do that with some of your other hand pieces that are on the commercial market that you buy. Again, you're ready to go. Let's go ahead and plug it in to the razor tip. And the razor tip is already on. It's at about, it says 72. I have no clue what the 72 represents, whether it's 2/3 full or not. So I'm just going to turn it down just a little bit because I have no clue. And and let's go ahead and heat it up. While it's warming up, because that's quite a bit of wire, as you can see, to have to heat up with this unit. I just got a piece of birch here. Over here is a piece of mahogany. We'll put a burn on each one of them. If you were looking at this, you can see that it's actually starting to turn red hot, and it should be able to run this one for quite a while. So let's go ahead, and it needs to be flatter. Okay, let's go ahead and do a brand. Very simple brand. And with this one, you really have to let it recover. It's going to have some recover time. And this is on birch plywood. Let's go ahead and put it on a piece of mahogany. And you can see it does a real nice job of that. And if you were to brush it out with one of the brushes, it brushes off real nice. Again, nice soft, you always use a real soft bristled brush. I covered that in a previous video if you want to watch that. So here it is, it's working. Now, let's go ahead and turn it off. And you can see that you didn't have much recovery time. You had some recovery time on that. I'm going to switch over to what I might call my scorcher. And I got to use a foot pedal on this one. And let's see, whereabouts is it? Okay. There's a foot pedal on it because what happens is I forget to, I've gotten up from this type of machine for a phone call or to go to the bathroom, and a couple hours later come out and find out I left everything on. And this one should be up to temperature already. And let's just turn it up just a little bit higher. And it's actually red hot right now, and you'll see a considerable difference in the way it brands. About as fast as you can go, it'll take the brand. We'll do it on a piece of mahogany. And if you let it really get hot, might. Okay? When I do this, I do it outside or with a special ventilator to capture the smoke. So you see that it works quite well. That really is everything regarding it. It's very simple to make, and it's not any different than one like this, but it's a whole lot easier, a lot cheaper, and reusable. And oh, I know what I wanted to show you. Let's turn this on and make sure that it's hot. Okay? It's now hot. We know it's hot. So you know that it is burning. Here's the reason why you're using very, very low voltage. This is using low voltage, and you would never do this with other types of things. I can literally hold on to that and do pyrography. Because of low voltage, it does not go through your hand and basically does not hurt you. I wouldn't want to do it all day long. There's no feel. You can't feel anything. And the only thing I'm feeling right now is there's a little bit of heat coming up through here, and it might be a degree or hotter. It's a little warmer than my hand. So, again, there's the way to do it. Thank you for watching. Larry Sefton, maker of the Scorcher II, which I designed myself, and that is a razor tip, and that is a way of making a very simple hand piece.